It is just after 12. Carrie, what do you think? Should we go ahead and get started?
I think we should because we're talking about lunchtime, right? And some of us have a little bit more latitude with being on time than others. So let's get this started so nobody has to miss the whole entire process. So thank you everyone for joining. We appreciate it very much, and we hope this is at least your second, if not more, time with us. Marie, want to get us started?
Yeah, definitely. So I see a lot of familiar names that signed in. So that's great. Nice to see everyone again. If it is your first time, welcome. We do like to keep these sessions fairly interactive. So we will be asking you to partake in some polls. We'll ask you to share some ideas and thoughts in the chat as well. So today our focus is really on the onboarding experience. And that's from orientation to completing paperwork to really integrating your new hire into your culture, into your team, and into their role. So we'd like to just start out by asking who has ever had a bad onboarding experience? And you can share it in the chat.
Now you know you all have at least once in your life. So please feel free to add. And you could say hypothetically, you don't want to admit it's yours.
Or if you know someone who's had a bad onboarding experience. I can share mine when I was much younger, in one of my first management roles. It was my first day with the company. I went in, my supervisor said, all right, I'm gonna have you work in this department. I need you to pretty much redo the entire department, the layout of it. I was working in retail. She gave me a very detailed picture with style numbers and codes of what it needed to look like. I had no idea what I was looking at. She told me, just look at it, see what questions you have, and I'll come back and I'll work on this with you. We'll do it together. So I'm like, okay, great. So we're going to work on this together. No big deal. She never came back. So I ended up doing that entire department myself. I figured it out, but for some people, that can be really terrifying and off-putting.
Yeah, well, I mean, fortunately for you, you were in a management position, so you kind of already had the chops, right, to do it. I know that a friend of my son's, recently started a job, and he was so excited because this was big time, and he shared that he was remote 2 days of the week. That's how the office was, and his first day was a remote day. So that in itself is a little bit challenging, right? And then after that, after his initial onboarding experience, he was left alone for the rest of the day. And then the next day he was inside the office. They said, "Oh, well, this is great. We have a very we have a we have a guest visiting or something. And so we're going to be really busy, but we will get to you." They didn't get to him for a week and a half, and he's entry level, it was really daunting for him, and I think he felt frustrated and honestly unwelcome. It looks like Stephanie has something. She started at a car dealership. Then the first day, the hiring manager threw papers on my desk and gave me a quick run through of the software, telling me to start working on those items. Marie, it was about the same. She didn't come back to answer questions. I called her the drive-by manager. Oh, I like that.
I like that too. That
That
is your
told a
drive
lot.
manager.
Oh yeah. That you know what? I feel like that just defined your work experience in a nutshell. Am I right, Stephanie? Did it change later? And anyone else feel free? No, it never changed. I'm sorry. I am sorry.
And that's the thing, it typically doesn't. And that impression it'll never leave you. That stays with you. Yep, you left after 6 months. I
Exactly right.
I actually ended up staying with that company for over 13 years. But that manager did not. I eventually worked my way up and moved into her position and then kept going. But um, that experience really stuck with me because I never wanted another employee to experience that. I didn't want a new hire to come in and have, that lack of support. lack of follow through and promises that weren't kept.
Yeah. Well, so far no one else has shared. We do hope that you'd like to add in and share. But let's move on, I guess. And if you do want to share, if you hop on and you have an experience that you can think of, please feel free to throw it in the chat. We'll be monitoring it.
So kind of as we said, you really, that impression sticks with you. You never get a second chance to make that first impression. There was a recent survey which surveyed 1,000 working Americans who started their current job within the past year. And they were asked questions about their onboarding experience, how that experience affected their job, and what could have been done better. So these are just a high level overview of the results, but 50% of those new hires said that they actually plan to leave their current employer. And there was a direct correlation to a poor onboarding experience and lack of training. So coupled with that, that number skyrocketed to 80% that want
Wow.
to leave their current employer. Yeah. So that onboarding experience leaves not just a lasting impression, but a strong impression and how this person sees themselves fitting in at this company moving forward.
Yeah, I kind of think that's why, I know Maria, you and I talked about it. One of the reasons why we wanted to do this, because we feel that it makes that first impression. And it's not, sometimes we think that it's the employee who makes the first impression, but you know what? The employer is on notice as much as the employee is on those very first few days, let alone the first 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. And there were some other key takeaways from the survey that we're going to dig into a little bit more during this session, but some of the ones that really stood out is that remote employees are more likely than on-site employees to feel undertrained. Remote employees are also 117% more likely than on-site employees to plan to leave their employer soon. Think about that, 117%. That's a huge difference.
Wow. Okay.
They found that employees that are working for large companies tended to be more satisfied with their onboarding than employees in small companies, which kind of just tied into, I think it is a little bit more about structure. So when you're in like a larger corporate company, you tend to have a lot more structure in place, where smaller companies, they're small, so they'll kind of do things as they go.
And also maybe when you work for a small company, you kind of get that sort of homey vibe right away, and you almost feel like it should be a family because it's small and it's decorated with little, tchotchkes and whatever. And maybe you almost expect to be a little bit more of a number in a large organization. So that almost makes it more important for you to be careful with your onboarding experience, that you give the right vibe that fits your culture.
Yeah. And then the other thing that really stuck out is that 1/3 of employees found their onboarding experience just to be confusing. And
Wow.
that's, yeah, not something you want your new hires to leave with the feeling of being confused.
No, absolutely not. Looks like we have Joseph. Oh, wait, it disappeared.
Oh,
Someone made a comment and it went away.
uh, I saw it
Sorry,
and it was
I
gone.
I
Sorry.
had to fix it.
Oh, feel free to put it back in, Josette, and we'll read it off.
I saw that it looked like your manager spent most of their time gossiping and not really training you. Was that?
Yeah, but I spent like 11 years with them, but that first year was really, really rough. And thank God that I had enough experience to know where to grasp and where to go for information, but that is a really tough onboarding experience.
I'm glad you shared that, because it is, especially when you're left alone. You know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Josette. Appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
We're going to dive into our introductions here, just so you know who we are, because we've been talking to you, and unless you've been around before, you may not know. So I'm Carrie Patrizio. I'm an HR business partner at Compass Workforce Solutions. I am a certified HR professional with a SHRM-CP certification. And I am also a newly certified predictive index talent optimizer as of 2023. And Marie and I are actually working on becoming mental health first aiders so that we can really do the whole full circle. Thank you, Josette. And I also carry an MS in Human Resources Management at St. Joseph's College. My favorite things are my family as well as my work. One of the things I love about HR is being able to get invested in the people that I work with and the employees and make a better experience for them. So it almost feels a little bit like less like work. But on my off days, I love to spend time with my family in Aruba or in Canada during Winter Carnival, or just trying on sunglasses because you know what? Have a little fun. Marie?
And I'm Marie Mareno. I'm an HR generalist at Compass Workforce Solutions. Like Carrie, I'm also a certified predictive index practitioner, and we're going to talk a little bit about PI throughout our session. I'm also a certified HR professional through SHRM. And I teach some of the SHRM certification courses. So if anybody on here, I know we often have people that are, like an HR team of one or working in HR. If you're interested in obtaining your SHRM certification and you just have no idea where to start, please feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to support you with that and kind of guide you on that journey because it is a bit of a journey. I also have a bachelor's in human resource management. And then a little bit more about me as an individual and not just in HR. I absolutely love my dog, Harrison. He is up in the corner. He just turned 7 this week. So that was a happy and, oh my God, my baby's getting old type of moment. I'm a specialist, which is my PI reference profile. What this means is that I'm highly detailed. I like a lot of structure, a lot of organization. I like to really just specialize in any area that I'm focusing on, which really works perfect in the HR realm.
All right, so moving into our next slide, we're going to kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the onboarding experience at this point. And again, please, anytime, feel free to add anything into the comment because anything that you have to share is always going to make it the experience better for us as well as the participants in this webinar. Our objectives here are to understand the importance of comprehensive onboarding. We define the concept of employee onboarding throughout this webinar and its significance in shaping the employee experience. We'll identify the key compliance elements of a successful onboarding process. And then essentially we're going to ask that you recognize how effective onboarding contributes to employee engagement, retention, and overall organizational success. And again, your comments are going to help with that a lot. We'll be navigating the onboarding journey by outlining the stages of the employee onboarding process. From the pre-arrival, right, because it starts before they even get to you, to the integration into the organizational culture. It's actually a big, big lift. We're going to provide insights into best practices for each onboarding stage, including the orientation, the training, and even socialization. We hope to equip you with tools and strategies to streamline your onboarding journey for diverse roles within your organization. And then finally, we're going to, and not just only these things, but more, we're going to develop skills for onboarding mastery for you. So we'll be exploring practical techniques for fostering a positive onboarding experience for your new hires. We're going to highlight the communication strategies that you can use to make sure that you have effective information transfer. That's important too. And understanding how everything fits together in the onboarding process. We'll also talk about ways to evaluate and continuously improve the onboarding process because every single time you do it, I'm sure that you can make changes and improve. And we're also going to want to make sure that it aligns with the evolving needs of your organization and your workforce, which again also changes every day as well. So come along on the journey with us. So the question is, what is onboarding? Onboarding is a strategic process, and it is, folks. This involves a lot of forethought and it's planning. It's about what you're going to get out of that employee, as well as what you're going to give that employee and how that employee is going to affect your organization as a whole. It goes beyond administrative tasks. It's a critical investment in the employee experience, contributing to the productivity, engagement, and basically overall organizational success. The employee onboarding is a process that organizations are always use throughout time to integrate the new employee into the workplace and help them adapt to their new roles. I mean, I think that Josette and Marie shared, how challenging it was to adapt into that role when they just had a drive-by, right? It involves orientation, training, and socialization to familiarize those new hires with your company's culture. Not only that, but your processes, procedures, and your expectations. The primary goals of the employee onboarding are really just to set the stage for a very positive and successful employment experience where that employee stays long-term, right? Is engaged in your company as well as their teammates, and you get everything that you need out of that employee. So what is it? It's a human resources industry term, okay? And we refer to this process as introducing a newly hired employee into your company. Some of the common onboarding experiences that we actually use, right, are the job offer, which is part of the onboarding, salary negotiation, new hire paperwork. I'm hoping this is resonating with a few of you. These are the basics: policy and culture training, job training, the employee handbook training, because we do not want to just plop that handbook on the desk of a new hire or send it out via an HRIS system without really talking about it. Benefits paperwork, benefits education, tours of the facility, executive introductions, and team introductions.
I think a lot of times, Carrie, people confuse onboarding and orientation. And they tend to try to use those terms interchangeably, but they are two different things. Orientation is just a component of your onboarding. Onboarding is the bigger process. And it extends through, it could be 30 days, 60 days, 90, a year of the employee's beginning of employment. Whereas orientation is typically, that first day, that first week.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's important to differentiate that and understand that this is a more holistic approach.
I think in my experience that has been the confusion, right? We have someone who thinks that onboarding and orientation is the same thing. So it lasts a day, and then that new hire is out on the world, ready to go.
Yep,
And what we're hoping
to,
yeah, I mean, what we're hoping to impress on all of you is that, again, this is a holistic approach, and it's long term. It's not just the first day.
All right, so we'd like to get some feedback from everyone. If you could, in the Slido, you can either go to slido.com and enter that number, or you could use the QR code. And if you could share one word which describes how you'd like a new employee to feel after their first day.
And if for some reason you can't get into the Slido, please, you can always add it to the comments. We're monitoring that as well. We already have someone who added welcomed.
Welcomed, energized, prepared.
Excited.
Inspired. Yep.
Come on, folks. What else have we got there? Eager, like it. Valued.
Valued. Oh, I love that one. Yep.
Ready to hit the ground running. Love it.
Accepted in the chat.
Awesome.
Advocated for. Yeah. Javon, that always feels great. You feel supported. You feel like someone's looking out for you.
I think that's something a lot of people don't think about. That's amazing. Good. Engaged, important. Confident, huge.
What about in the chat, how you don't want a new hire to feel?
Ooh, good question, Marie.
Over-
Overwhelmed, confused. Yes, yes. Oh
Lost.
my
Oh, they're
gosh.
coming in quick now.
Bored. Yeah, right. Everybody's got one of those.
Anxious.
Anxious. Oh man. Yep. Got a couple for confused. I feel like I've done that, right? At some point in my life, I walked in on my first day, and when I got home, they said, "How was your first day?" I'm like, I don't know. It's hard.
Overwhelmed.
Stressed. Stressed.
I think overwhelmed and stressed are big ones. Scared.
Oh,
Yeah, scared.
scared.
Maybe I might not be able to do this. Maybe this is too much for me.
Yeah, I feel like that's how I would have felt, Marie, in your onboarding experience. I would have kind of been a little scared, like, oh my gosh, how do I do this? So,
I think yeah. I mean, especially knowing my PI profile is I'm a problem solver and I
mhm.
do like to figure things out on my own. So I wasn't terrified, but I just knew that I just knew it wasn't good.
Oh, well. All right. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And please continue to share anything you want to.
All right, so now we know kind of how we want people to feel, how we don't want them to feel. How do you think your most recent new hires would describe their onboarding experience? And it's anonymous, so please be honest. And I can share that I've onboarded many people in my career, and there were some times that I knew that they felt overwhelmed.
Excited and happy we have in the chat.
Supported, welcomed, and cared for. Have you
Very
ever onboarded someone and then at the end, like the end of their first day, maybe you're like, I can't really gauge them. I'm not sure.
don't currently onboard, but I oversee a program intake process. I can tell participants are confused and overwhelmed. Good observation. Is there anyone that you can share feedback with?
Do you guys mind if I unmute myself?
No,
No,
Javon,
I
please
welcome
do it.
it.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I would say, there's definitely, directors and stuff. I can report that stuff too. I do a few things, but one of the few observations I've made is like, I don't want to call it spoon feeding because I feel that's a demeaning term, for an adult, but I think from a project management perspective, when you can break something down into something that's like very simplified and easy to digest, it makes it easier to ensure that people understand what's going on. So for like intake and like, a lot of the projects we work on in the classroom, I think that they can benefit from just like clarification. Sometimes I forget that my level of understanding exceeds um some people's level of understanding and how we can create something like universal.
Yeah, Giovanni, it's a very good point. And I think that one of the things to remember is that, a document like you're talking about or something similar, you sometimes need to get your sea legs when you're at a new organization. And you may know your stuff, but it's different. The scenario, the whole scenery is different. The people are different. The way that you do XYZ that I'm used to doing XYZ is different. So having the benefit of a well thought out policy, procedure, program is amazing. Um, I thank you for sharing that.
I
And
agree with
I love
that.
that Josette has pointed out that onboarding is more than just paperwork. There has to be a bit of hospitality as well. The way you greet and engage is important. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Great job. This is going to be a good webinar, Marie, because people are
Yeah,
engaging. I love it.
me too. All right, so I think we all have a decent understanding of why onboarding is so important. We know what kind of we're trying to accomplish, but some of the key things that we're really looking for is how onboarding contributes to increased job satisfaction, increased performance. It affects your retention rates. So think about all that time that we just spent recruiting for this new hire. You reviewed resumes, you posted jobs, maybe you had to source some candidates. People took time out of their day to interview the person, make that job offer. So really, to potentially lose that person within their first 90 days, six months, it's going to put you back at square one. Onboarding also sets the foundation for a positive employer-employee relationship, and it can really impact that employee's overall experience within your organization. So it's really crucial for several reasons, and the importance extends to both the employer and the new hire. So think about, again, that faster productivity and integration. So the quicker and more efficiently someone is trained, the sooner they can start contributing in a meaningful way. And whenever someone joins a new company, it does feel good to be able to contribute. You know, nobody wants to just sit there and learn, and not get to actually do anything and feel like they have a purpose and value, which also impacts employee engagement. So if you have a good onboarding process, you're prepared for this person when they come in on their first day, you're showing them that you're invested in their success. They're going to feel more engaged in the work that they're doing, in the company, and the team. It's also an opportunity to really clarify roles and expectations. So this is the time to set expectations, answer questions, educate the employee on what exactly their role is, who the key players are, who they're going to be working with. And then there is a strong compliance and legal component to having a good onboarding process. So if you're planned properly, this will ensure that all your compliance criteria are met. So this includes things from verifying their eligibility to be employed in the US, so like doing their I-9, any wage notices, depending on what state you're in, any company-specific items. And failure to do this properly could lead to a financial liability. So if you receive an audit, you might have a big problem on your hands.
Yeah, I mean, we want to have a little fun with this, right? Because it's an important topic for many reasons, but compliance is a tremendous part of onboarding. And if you ignore one piece, that could make the difference between a successful audit and one that's not successful. That leaves you with a potential fine.
Yeah. And it also helps facilitate those social connections. So I think we could probably all think of a time when we were onboarded and somebody sat us in front of a computer or a TV screen for probably almost 8 hours and said, here, you're going to watch some videos. That is absolutely horrible.
In there.
So, yep. You definitely want to make sure that your onboarding process has a mixture of social, instructor-led, or led by a buddy or a mentor, and then some self-guided training as well.
And again, it's a mix between that orientation and onboarding to make the whole package.
And then lastly, it leads to really strong ongoing development and training. So you're helping support employees in their growth and development, you're creating learning opportunities for them, and you're setting them up on a path to continue that development and ultimately be a stronger team player and a stronger member of your team. So one thing that HR professionals generally agree on is that onboarding begins the moment that the candidate accepts a job offer, and it ends when the new employee is fully integrated and performing as expected. So whether or not an organization provides all of the onboarding elements that we're going to go through, it is a wise investment to provide all new employees with a thorough, efficient, and consistent introduction to your new organization. So as we mentioned in that survey, we found that the quality of onboarding experienced by new employees really impacted engagement, performance, longevity. The best onboarding processes will include what's called relational onboarding. So again, having that mixture. And it requires defining and implementing a standard onboarding process. So you want to keep it consistent. Use the same onboarding or similar onboarding process for all new hires. You might have to change it up a little bit depending on what their job is or department that they're working in. But as long as you're consistent, you'll be able to look at what's working and what's not working and extract some meaningful results.
And Marie, we should probably share what we were talking about earlier. I think this is a good place because one of the things that we're doing is we're sharing what our thoughts on onboarding, but you do need to make sure that your onboarding process reflects your company and your culture. So we're happy to share all of the things that we feel should be part of something, but it's important to make sure that you have defined what works for your company and when you think the employee is ready.
Yeah. So one of the first things we look at when planning the onboarding experience is preparation. So what's the plan for that person's first day, their first week? Who's involved? And are the people that are involved clear on exactly what their role is? So a best practice is really to develop an agenda in advance. You can prepare all paperwork that the employee will need to complete, whether you're doing it electronically or you're doing it in hard copy. And then you can also prepare their workstation or their desk. This way, when they come in, it's all nice and set up for them and they feel welcomed and ready to go. You also want to think about what that welcome and orientation look like. So plan out how you're going to welcome the new hire, who's going to be their point of contact when they first come in. You want to make sure they're not just walking in and saying, "Hi, I'm here for my first day. I have no idea where to go." Whoever is going to be welcoming them, they should know who they should be asking for, and they should be readily accessible to them. And then think about their first day. So, if you create an agenda, what does that first day look like? So is there a mix of instructor, or you can use a mentor-led tasks and some self-guided tasks? You want to give them a balance so they're not too overwhelmed with one form of communication. And then also preparing any company policies and procedures to review with them. So what policies does the new hire need to review and sign off on? Is there an employee handbook? Are there any external policies, procedures, or standalone documents, anything job specific? You want to make sure you're prepared with all of that in advance, as well as any job specific training this person might need to complete. So for example, I know we work with a lot of companies where people need to drive as part of their job. And one of the requirements is that they complete a driving course within their first 30 days of employment. So we'll include that into that agenda and work that into their first month. And then integration. So how are they going to begin meeting their coworkers and building those connections? Will you do a team lunch? Will you have individual meetings so that they can get to know each other? Again, think back to what Carrie just mentioned. You want to make sure that it reflects what your culture is and what that team's culture is. So if you're a very technical, head down type of team, you might not want to have a big team lunch or a big pizza party to welcome that person, but it might make more sense to have individual meetings where they can meet each team member one-on-one for even just 15 minutes. Plan out your check-ins and your feedback. So, we don't want those people to leave their first day, their first week feeling confused and overwhelmed. So incorporate, a check-in with their supervisor, maybe at the end of the first day and at the end of their first week. And then you can do that going forward just to see how they're doing, what questions they might have, and offering them some feedback and guidance. At least they know that they have your support.
Also, I was thinking about, Marie, make sure that they have an opportunity to meet the senior leader on site, because the last thing you want a new hire to do is meet that senior leader and not know they have.
Yep, that's a great point. You also plan out what any mentoring and support look like. So you could potentially have a mentor or a buddy that you're going to assign to this person. So who's going to be their go-to person for the support? It could be a colleague or it could be the supervisor, but you definitely want to establish that and let that new hire know that this is your go-to person. This way they feel comfortable going to them. Just make sure whoever that go-to person is available to help them. The last thing you want is for them to be going to someone asking questions and asking for guidance and that person being either too busy or, maybe they're really not a people person.
Yeah, and they feel like an inconvenience. Someone asked, what intervals do you recommend for a temperature check? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as the supervisor, and especially when I onboard people, I check in daily on a temperature check. And then once, we're done with the first week, I'll change it to twice a week. So like on a Monday and a Friday, I'll
Yeah,
check
I
in.
mean, as an HR, usually having been on site, I would typically do the same thing. And always within at least the first month, I'll check in and say, hey, how are things going? I actually have a formal meeting with them and I say, do you feel like you're getting everything you need? Are there any trainings that maybe you feel like you're missing? That gives me a good idea early on enough to catch someone becoming dissatisfied, and I can share that with their supervisor or leader.
What does that process look like for someone that would vocalize something like that? What are the different ways that a company might go about solving that issue?
Like
Like
I've
if, yeah, like if someone had, if they said they wanted like more training, or they were.
Yeah, like, and they were very like specific about certain areas where they wanted to grow. Like what would that look like?
Well, from an HR perspective, right, if that was something that someone shared with me in our check-in, I would have an open dialogue with their supervisor or manager, and they would know that I do these check-ins first of all, so they would expect me to have that conversation with them later and share. And that's it's a perfect opportunity to do that. This is what your employee is looking for. This is what they think might be missing. Sometimes it's something that I should have given them that was missing. So it's not always the supervisor. Bear that in mind. Sometimes it's just something that I missed. But yeah, I just think that it would just be a simple conversation. I don't think that there's necessarily a huge process around it. But just making sure that the leaders are aware that you're having these conversations and providing that feedback is essential. You feel like you want to
Gotcha.
add anything, Marie?
No, I think that's spot on. I mean, and from a management perspective, yeah, I mean, I think it's just hearing the employee, the new hire, what are they looking for? Being transparent with them. If you forgot to give it to them, let them know, like, I that's actually on me. Let me get you that. Or letting them know, I'm gonna look into it and see what we can do, and then circle back with them.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
And then lastly, have a plan for their ongoing development. So what's the plan to ensure this person continues to progress and making sure there are more learning opportunities in place? I do want to mention to also consider what your plan would be for an internal promotion. So if you're promoting somebody internally to a higher level role, if they're moving departments or they're transferring locations, how is that person going to be onboarded? It might not need to be as robust as this because, maybe they're already very familiar with the company, but you definitely want to have maybe a scaled down agenda or plan in place to help integrate them into that new role, into the location, or into that new team. Maybe assign them a buddy or a mentor to help get them up to speed on policies, procedures, role clarity. Um, you definitely don't want to just kind of say, all right, well, you're already onboarded into the company. I know you're going somewhere new or you're doing a new role, but here you go free.
That's an amazing thing, Marie. You're actually right. And I was thinking about people who are go from individual contributor to leaders in your company, right? Make sure that there's some kind of a leadership training planned for, because a lot of times we promote people who are just really good at their job, but they may not be prepared to be leaders and understand what's required of them. So it's a good thing not to ignore. So that was a really good point.
Thanks. And I know we kind of mentioned it a little bit, but compliance is huge. It's not the funnest part of onboarding, but it's one of the most essential parts. So this kind of ranges from the person accepting that offer. So making sure that they've accepted that offer in writing. You've provided them a written offer letter, which details out the terms and conditions of the employment. Always mention that it's an at-will employment. You also want to be aware of any background checks and what your specific state and local regulations are. I often have a lot of times employers come to me and they're like, oh, I want to do a background check on this person. And I'm like, okay, well, have you offered them employment yet? No. Okay, so we can't do a background check until we offer them an offer of employment.
Well, also, have we got a request for a background check, an acknowledgement of background check from the employee? We do have to have that, at least in New York.
Yep. And then you also want to consider any of your necessary paperwork and documentation. We're going to dig a little bit more into that. And then the legal and regulatory compliance. So think about what documents are required to be collected or completed based on federal, state, local, and your company's guidelines. A best practice is really to create a checklist for new hires, which includes all federal, state, local, and company guidelines and the forms that need to be completed. You want to prepare that new hire paperwork in advance of the employee's first day. There are definitely bound to be hiccups that are going to be out of your control during onboarding, but the paperwork should not be one of them. This is something that is well in your control. Something that we do at Compass is we actually create what's called a new hire kit for all of the companies that we work with. And this ensures that they have everything that they need in that kit for each new hire that comes on board.
Yeah. Now, onboarding technology is going to make it very simple to track your metrics, right? It can streamline the paperwork and the manual processes. So if you're lucky enough to have that opportunity, you can collect e-signatures. You can do the new hire paperwork prior to their first day. You can make personalized welcome emails. Some HRIS systems actually allow you to send little videos, which is a lot of fun. You can have IT checklists, welcome packets created, policy training can even take place that way. Sending automated deadline reminders if they haven't completed trainings or documents, and they can secure employee data management in this situation. Oops, sorry. Also, W-4 federal tax forms for employees, W-9 federal tax forms for contractors. You need to take care of state tax withholding forms, direct deposit or ACH deposit forms, non-disclosure and non-compete agreements. Now, be careful with the non-competes. Marie, do you want to share?
Yep, be careful with those. You want to make sure that you can't say that an employee can't work for, an outside company doing similar work, because you could be limiting that person's ability to make income. So I've seen this specifically with one client recently. They're a cleaning company, and they had a provision in place that none of their employees could work for another cleaning company. Depending on your state, specifically New York State, they will not take kindly to this because you're really limiting that person's ability to earn income.
Yeah, I saw it with physician's assistants. Where are you supposed to go? 2 states over? So definitely be very careful. Also consider security and confidentiality agreements, alcohol and drug test consent agreements, and handbook acknowledgement forms. No use putting out that handbook if you haven't got an employee acknowledgement that they actually read it and will be responsible to it. Also, benefit enrollment waiver forms, just looking at the slide, and wage notifications.
Sorry, I moved us forward on accident.
It's okay, we're ready. We only have about 15 minutes left, so we
Okay,
probably.
all right. So we're gonna kind of speed it up just in the interest of time. So really back to that survey that we spoke about, the number one response that was received for how to improve onboarding is to get the team involved. So as part of your onboarding process, really identify who will be involved, the tasks that they're responsible for. Best practice, again, is to create that onboarding checklist and then ensure all team members are aware of their role and the timeline. So what role will your supervisor play, HR, IT, and if you're going to use a mentor or onboarding buddy system?
So good tasks for managers are, we're on the right slide. No, I'm on the wrong slide here.
Oh, you are.
Oh, I am. Okay. Share the good news, okay? When a new hire comes on, it's an event. Send a welcome email introducing your new hire. It means a lot. Assign your new hire a mentor, like Marie has said several times now, and an onboarding buddy. Invite your new employee to reoccurring one-on-one meetings to provide those regular check-ins. We talked a little while ago about timeline check-ins, getting an idea of where they're at. If you put them on the calendar, it's easy for you not to forget to have them. Okay. Schedule your new hires first day meetings, prioritizing intro calls with colleagues who they're going to be working with at first. Coordinate that welcome meeting or a phone call if they're remote to kick off the new hires first day. The goal is to make them feel welcome. Again, you can set up a welcome lunch with the new hires team or perhaps the manager and a member of that team. But again, as Marie pointed out, if that's not something that fits your culture, don't do it. You don't want to create an odd expectation by that employee that that's how that's going to be when you're an employer that's segregated and everybody hangs out in their cubicles. Nothing wrong with that. So do something that fits your culture. Okay. Give the employee an introduction to the business. Tell them about where they work, including how their role fits in and any performance expectations that you're going to have for their onboarding. And then, of course, take your new hire on a tour of the office. I was with somebody once, they kept taking me back in different directions. So I was so lost by the time I was done that I didn't know where anything was. Tasks for human resources include sending out the new hire welcome packet, including the forms and the documents that the new hires must complete. And then documenting the new hire's role and compensation information in your HRIS system or records. This is essential. Add the new employee to the payroll. And then share essential company policies. It's important that they know the hours of the operation. I've actually been at one job where I wasn't told what the hours were. The dress code, the last thing you want to do is have to censure the employee their first week because you didn't tell them what the dress code was. Directions and parking information, reminders of what to bring on the first day. That would include I-9 documentation. And please remember that you're not allowed to tell them what documents to bring. Provide that list of acceptable documents and let them select. You can provide guidance, but please do not tell them which ones that you prefer. Also, direct deposit information. And you can schedule intro meetings to go over paperwork, including the benefits, direct deposit, and company policies. Now, if your organization conducts periodic reviews, such as maybe a 90-day probationary period or a 30-day check-in, I urge you to actually do that. The thing that will make an employee feel lost or forgotten is when 30 days or 60 days or 90 days roll by and they haven't heard from anyone. That's really important. Okay. Ask new hires to complete the background check again and make sure that paperwork is in order, and then send the new hire to complete a drug screen again, if applicable, with your company. The IT onboarding checklist here would be create an email address for the new hire, set up account permissions for any platforms or software the role requires, and then prepare the computer and any phone equipment for tech accessories that they may need. And again, I put in the chat a while back, a stapler, big deal. Mentor or onboarding buddy checklist. I think we've talked about that. And then the onboarding documents that you're looking for the employees, also including the I-9. Remember that it's important that you either keep the documents, copies of the documents from the employee, or don't. Okay, you can't do both. So if you choose to make copies of that employee's passport and keep it in the file, that's absolutely fine, but you need to do the same for every employee. And you also need to fill out the entire form. You need to make sure that that piece of information is documented on the form, what ID they brought with you, what the ID they brought with them, and that you need to sign the bottom as the person who verified that that document was not expired and an original document and applicable to prove their identity as well as their right to work in the United States. Maybe we move on to the next slide.
So I know we kind of mentioned this, you really want to create that positive first impression. You only get that one chance. So really thinking about that employee's first day. you should really have two goals here. So one are really setting the expectations and introducing the objectives. So you want the employee to leave with a crystal clear idea about what their job duties are and what their responsibilities are on day one. So think about the welcome message and how you're going to introduce them to others. Are you going to send out a welcome message to the entire team, to the entire company, welcoming this person? You also want to do an office tour and show them their workspace. So even if you did that office tour when they came in for their interview, do it again. Chances are pretty good that they've already forgotten where the bathroom is. That's going to be important. And if they interviewed for quite a few companies, as people looking for jobs do, they may have forgotten what the office looks like. It's also a good opportunity to introduce them to people as you walk them through the office. You also want to issue any equipment that they're going to be using, any tools. So think about laptops, phones. Will they have a remote setup? If they are remote, you want to issue that stuff in advance. This way on their first day, they're ready to go. And then consider any company swag. So are you going to do like a fun gift bag with company logo items on there? You know, a lot of people like to do water bottles, sweatshirts. If you're doing it, again, be consistent. So if you're doing it for one new hire, you should do it for all new hires. You don't want to pick and choose when you do it. The other thing is that if you're going to do it, make it at least a little bit substantial, or maybe not do it at all. One time I had a client give me a swag bag to give to an employee, and it literally just had a little chapstick in it. And I'm like, all right, well, this is a giant bag for a little chapstick. This feels a little weird. But yeah, definitely consider that and be consistent with it.
Marie, in the interest of time, we do only have about 7 minutes left. We probably ought to skip around a little bit. I think we might be able to skip this
Yep.
and then move on to this one.
I do want to, touch on this a little bit more. So going back to setting those expectations, you really want to do that during that onboarding process. This way the person understands what's expected of them, the processes that are in place, and you're avoiding the potential of them making any mistakes by not complying with these things. And then if in the event the person doesn't follow the policies that you've set forth, say in your employee handbook, you can actually hold them accountable to it, as you know that it was reviewed with them. A best practice is to have them sign off on any policies and procedures, indicating that they've reviewed them, they understand them, and they're going to comply. As Carrie mentioned before, do not just drop a 60-page employee handbook and have somebody sign off on it. Best practice here is to kind of spend a little bit of time going through, not the entire thing, but the key policies, and then letting them know, this is a resource to revert back to.
And we urge you, just for this slide real quick, if your company includes employees in a shop or a warehouse, don't forget them. It's easy to do that. And these people are probably more likely to need a review of the job description and to understand the expectations and safety policies that your company has to ensure that they have a good experience with you as well.
And then I know some people in the chat asked about a copy of the presentation. Yes, and everyone is going to receive a copy of the webinar as well following our session.
I think we'll skip this
one. I think we're going to skip this. We do want to talk a little bit about introductory periods.
Yes. So the introductory period is also known as the probationary period or onboarding period. And we should note that probationary period is kind of a deceiving term, because it doesn't mean that that employee is on probation and that it changes anything about the terms of their employment with regards to the New York state or local or federal guidelines. So please be sure that that is in mind if you do feel like you need to separate from an employee at some point. This serves several purposes when starting the new job, and some common reasons for making sure that you have an introductory period are assessment of fit. Employers are going to use this time to assess whether the new employee is good fit, right, for the company, the culture, the values, and the job requirements. Also, performance. During this period, this is when you're going to start taking a look at whether that employee actually can do the things that you think that you thought that they could do when you reviewed their resume and after you interviewed them. Determining how much education or experience they seem to have and what you might have to supply to get them to the place where you want them to be. And that rolls into training and adaptation. Be prepared to adapt your schedule and your plan to make sure that the employee has everything they need to function for you and to be secure in their job. A clarification of expectations. It will use the introductory period to clarify the expectations regarding the job responsibilities, the performance standards, and workplace conduct. This is going to ensure that the employee has a very clear understanding of what's expected from them. Communication and feedback is essential during this time. Cultural integration, find ways to interject that employee into your team culture. It's a trial period for both parties. It's an opportunity for the employee to assess whether the job meets their career goals and for you to determine whether they meet your goals. And make sure that you address issues early.
Great. So I'm just going to touch on this very briefly because I know we're getting to the end and everyone, we're all short on time. But think about what happens after that typical 90-day period. Do you kind of leave that employee to float into the great beyond all by themselves? You're like, good, you're done, you've learned. Or do you have a plan in place? So definitely think about what that plan looks like. You want to ensure that the person continues to feel supported. That you have a regular cadence for check-ins with them, whether it's their direct supervisor or human resources, and that you celebrate their achievements and offer opportunities for ongoing development.
And we're not going to have time, I don't think, to go over some of the other items that we have on here. One in particular, we're talking about contractors. So if you're someone who has contractors, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to share the notes that we have on there to ensure that we do get that shared with you. But what we do ask you, we ran out of time, but we do ask if you consider sharing a review for us. It's as simple as using your camera on the screen and going to use the QR code. This allows us to know that we gave you something that was of value, that you liked it, and maybe you have some suggestions for something else you can put in the chat before you leave. We'll be happy to add that to our list of monthly webinars.
And I did
is there another way for us to leave a review for you guys? Because I'm actually on my phone right now, so I can't
you
get that QR code.
I will drop the link right into the chat.
Okay.
Thank you, Jerome.
Absolutely.
But we're very grateful for you to have joined. We're extra grateful for your participation and your willingness to be an integral part of this presentation. We've learned a lot from you, and we hope that you've enjoyed what we've shared. And next, what are we doing next, Marie?
Yeah, I saw quite a few questions, though, about remote employees, and I definitely think we want to dig into that a little bit more. So if anyone does have questions, please feel free to reach out to us about that, and we can incorporate that into our next session as well.
How can we make sure that they can reach out to us?
Through the emails that they receive to register.
There we go. Okay, guys, feel free to do that if you have questions. I was thinking we don't want to leave you off a cliff.
Emma, we do all types of webinars. So if there's something else that you need support with, or that you like just a session on, we're welcome to take that feedback.
Yep. We have a really good plan for next month. Bye.
You guys were amazing.
Thank you.
Thanks for your participation.
Any advice for so I'm studying industrial organizational psychology right now, and I haven't yet ventured into the world of HR. I've kind of had transferable encounters with it. What would some advice be for someone like me trying to make that jump?
I think you're actually pretty close with that IO psych background. IO psych and HR are very closely linked. I think it depends what type of area of HR do you want to get into?
So I'm gonna be honest, it's a very broad field, and I'm someone that likes to be used in a very broad capacity, so I don't mind. I think ideally it would more so be on the organizational development side.
Well, I think that it wouldn't hurt for you to affiliate with a local SHRM chapter or with SHRM at large and maybe start taking some of the classes for certification. I think you learn a lot more about what you're doing and in HR and what the options are for being a part of a human resources department. When you're in those classes, there are other people to talk to. The instructor has usually vast experience in HR. So I honestly feel like that would be a good place for you to start.
Okay, alrighty, duly noted. Thank you so much, guys, and I look forward to receiving emails from you guys so I can review all this information.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you.
Enjoy your
Have a
day.
good weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone.